Imagine you come home from a night out, you're 16 years old. Mum and Dad are panic-stricken because the doors are wide open. Things are totally unnatural. Nothing like it seems. It's a really frightening feeling to know that there's someone potentially in the house. Things have gone missing. You feel violated. And I'll never forget that feeling because I've never felt it before, I guess. And I felt that the solution was to get a dog. I don't know why actually, but I think that was the solution. And we never got robbed again. My name is Kris Kotsopoulos from Melbourne, Australia. I run Forrel Kennels, Detective Dogs Australia, Performer Dog, Premium Foods. My life is revolved around ongoing training, ongoing tuition, ongoing help, a bit of travel, our dog food, our breeding, our detective dog business. Other than that, not so busy. I struggle with that word, and I really do. And I've struggled with it for a long time because from the outside, it looks like what the term says, protection training, but it's nothing like it. I often question people and say, what's the dog protecting? Is the dog protecting itself or is the dog protecting you? The outside picture says it's protection training because the dog is biting someone. If I tie the dog up to a pole and take the owner away and I get the same behavior, what's the dog protecting? I can hold a ball, I can hold a sleeve, I can hold a pillow, a squeaky toy, and I would get the same behavior because the dog's driven, loves the engagement, likes to get its reward, and I've taught him a behavior. And the behavior is you bark at me, I give you the ball. It's the illusion that we've portrayed. Now, when you use aggression and you're really, you're doing it like it was done in the 60s and 70s and 80s with a lot of stress, I don't blame the world in seeing it the way it was. Protection training, defensive training, aggression training, because they were putting the dogs into tremendous amounts of conflict. And think about what happens. The dog learns through that phase that if I act that particular way and I get to bite something, what is the dog doing? He's terminating the stress by biting. Therefore, it's the only time that there is protection training, all right? Because the dog's protecting himself from everything else. They will realize that it's simply drive fulfillment, and if it's done properly, the dog never fears the decoys, never fears anyone, and is courageous because there's no fear involved. It's total fulfillment. The moment there's aggression and defense involved, that's just too much dosage and pressures, and the dog is turning off pressure to bite, not because he enjoys it, only because he has no other option. So we've been breeding for nearly 37 years. In that time, I've had the luxury to look at a puppy, monitor the development, assess it all the way through its life, have the ability to reflect on it, and its grandparents and its parents and their progeny and so forth, and it goes years and years and years into the future. And I've had the ability to look at it and say, you know what, that selection wasn't right, or that selection was right. And I'm for one that always wants to see why things work, but most importantly, why they don't. And nature will have it that most times it just doesn't work. So when we're searching for the right instincts, the main one we're looking for is the prey drive. That is the ability to chase something that's triggers movement. It's born with a genetic capability, a threshold, and the environment or something in the environment triggers those thresholds or those instincts, and the dog has to react. and it can't help the reaction. We're looking for particular instincts that are easily triggered, and the other one is that the dog is very, very solid in the nervous system, in that the environment doesn't impact the dog much. So we're looking for dogs they're just a robust, happy, courageous, confident dog that loves life, loves people, loves children, and likes other dogs. Naturally, dogs fight and carry on and do what they do, but this is just the way dogs behave. It's up to us to manufacture what we want through training and conditioning. But fundamentally, the dog has to be a very, very honest, open dog that just loves life. That's the most important thing. And our main thing is very much positive reinforcement. It's very much positive reinforcement, but I'm not a fan of purely positive reinforcement because we live in a world of consequences. Most people are advocating that we shouldn't. They're saying that we should have just positive only systems, but an animal can't learn. You can't complete a learning process if you only have a positive component to it, because the learning process occurs from positive and negative learning. I'm not talking about being hard on the dog. I'm talking about if I do that, I get more rewards. Pretty simple. In fact, it's just life, isn't it? I don't believe in negative learning only. That's just you see the sour attitudes in the animal, and there's a huge negative consequence with it. I do like positive learning. I would say that the majority of learning is almost 80-90% positive learning, particularly in its foundation, because you're dealing with a 2-year-old delinquent. It's what it is, and it's a 2-year-old delinquent for the rest of its life. And so you have a real problem in that. How do you actually communicate with a 2-year-old child? That's my question. And most people can't do it because unless you've had children, you know the reality of a 2-year-old child is he screams and cries. So you put a toy in front of him or food in front of him, stick him in the high chair and pray. But it can't speak English or language. And if it can't speak a language, how do you communicate with it? Government legislates because of problems that occur in the community. The problems in the community occur because I think of the original selection issue. Although I believe in democracy, I also believe when it comes to stringent breeding programs, you shouldn't allow indiscriminate breedings, meaning people who can just breed willy-nilly. So when you have a breeding that occurs over there, two schizophrenic lunatic dogs that have got nerve issues and are afraid of life, and these puppies go out into the community and pet shops, and the unsuspected owner who comes along with their children who wants a puppy ends up with the nerve issues, and these dogs are so afraid of life that anything and any signal in the environment triggers defensive reactions because of that initial threshold problem they have, because of their gene selection, because of their fearful parents, and it starts this negative cycle. And the negative cycle produces negative behaviours or dysfunctional behaviours. And so what happens is government has no option but to legislate or have a blanket approach with their legislation. I think the first thing is correct animal management. So one thing is, don't have an assumption that every dog is friendly. Don't have an assumption that you can walk up to any dog indiscriminately. I think you just stay away from dogs. Stay away from other dogs. If you're walking your dog down the street, don't automatically assume that your dog is friendly or that dog's friendly. So just part ways. That way it's a far better solution for both people, as opposed to just meeting head on and then creating a confrontation. They're dogs. I don't know if there's a real solution for them. I think it's just stabilising the dog. I think it's choosing the right parents to breed with to produce more stable puppies, and then give them the right environment. And the right environment is not just necessarily a loving environment. It's an environment with an educated home. That's the right environment.
I'd like you to meet the George Clooney of Kinglake. George Clooney of Kinglake. Oh no, Emerald gets around this one.
Lake.
George Clooney. How's Emerald hanging for you?
George Clooney hasn't got a bad back.
No. Or a grey beard.
He has. Yeah.
Yeah, he has at the moment. Yeah. And he's got babies, twins, so I'm guessing that you don't want that part of the
No,
George
I don't want
Clooney.
babies.